Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. And today's my discussion topic is what is modernism and its features. And I'll totally discuss about modernism and its features. Now, at first, I will discuss about modernism. What is modernism? Modernism is a traditions of new and is a movement or reaction against the Victorian age. It begins in the 1890s and ended in 1945 after World War II. Postmodernism started. It means when modernism started, that was the period of 19th century, and it can says that it was begun in first half of the 20th century, and it rejects the 19th century traditions and realism. Modernism rejects some features, some things like realism traditions, and it rejects meters and use free words in poetry, and that's way in modernism focus on prose and give space in poetry, and uses stream of consciousness style is and their style was difficult and complex, and um, laws of faith and laws of innocence, and greatest writers were James Joyce, Virginia Woolf, and T.S. Eliot. And now there is a difference between modernism and modern. What modern is used for new ideas or equipments from previous things, previous ideas. Modern is new and involve the latest ideas or equipments in which a person follows new things and departure from previous traditions of things. It can say every era is the modern era because each era is modern or new from its previous era. Means in modern age new ideas was introduced, and it's a new tradition from previous traditions. In modernism, new traditions were introduced, and previous traditions were closed. And modernism mean in which ism is a movement. Ism is used for modern for movement, and when both words combine like modern and ism, it makes a movement that is known as modern movement. Modernism is a movement or reaction against medievalism. Medievalism is a time period like 16th 17th century. Modernism is a term widely used to identify new and exclusive features in the subjects, forms, concepts, and styles of literature. Industrializations, globalizations, new technologies, and the World War, specifically World War First. In modernism, as I tell you that modern is identify new ideas or features in the subjects, forms, concepts. Means introduce new ideas in subjects or writings, and introduce new concepts or styles in literature writing. And modernism is literary and cultural international movement. Means it's an international movement, not a specific country or genre. It's modernism is for whole the world, not for specific specific era, country or place. Modernism is a literary and cultural international movement that started in the early 20th century, means 19th to 1945. It reflects a sense of cultural crisis in which values were changed every type, and peoples were addicted second world war, and peoples faced first world war, and they faced very difficult circumstances. And modernism is marked by experimentations and Due to First World War, experimentations was started. People started to examine everything. What is the reason of that's happening, or there arises questions on that's happening, particularly manipulations of forms, and by the realizations that knowledge is not absolute. Modernism is a term that is associated with the 20th century. It is the reaction of realisms and romanticism. It is used for the field of science and art. This term is used to represent the values and beliefs of science, technologies, or most important social changes. Modernism main feature was belief of science and technology. Science and technology was the basic feature of modernism. Due to science and technology, World War One was attempted, and modernism is the name given to the modern movement which dominated the art and culture of the first half of the 20th century. It can be said that modernism is an earthquake in the art which brought down the structures of the previous 20th century practice in music, painting, literature, or architectures. Means modernism's attack on music, painting, literature, and architectures, and it comes in many changes. It had comes many changes in all these fields, and it seems and it is now it's like an earthquake. And this earthquake first earthquake was seen in Vienna. Vienna has been epicenter of this earthquake during the period of 1890s to 1910, but the effect of these earthquakes were felt in the other countries like France, Germany, Italy, and even Britain. Some art movements were included in this movement like Cubism, Dadaism, Surrealism, and Futurism, and I will explain these fields or movements next. What are the important points in modernism? There are some important points in modernisms like nothing was certain in this period. There are some basic points, important points in modernism. Through these points, you can understand it very well. That is, nothing was certain in this period means peoples were not believe on anything. They start arising questions. Everything was questioned. Everyone started to raise questions on happening in this movement. Nothing was fixed due to World War First and bloodshed. Due to World War First, there were many deaths, and people's and society was fragmented or destroyed. Destructions. Society has become pessimistic due to death, decay, and destructions. That's why everything was questioned. Modernism was focused on themes in writing. Even they had neglected the beauty of writing on themes. Victorians accept the voice of authority, but modernists reject the authorities. It means Victorians accept the authorities like courts and judiciaries and justice, but modernists reject all the concept of God and belief on truth. They reject the truth. They reject the objectivism. They believe on subjectivity and individualism, and modernists did not take anything as granted. Simple faith was replaced by modern man's desires to prompts means searching and arise questions. A big change come in this world at the time of modernism due to science and technology. It becomes a main reason for the World War First. People produced the interrogative habit of mind. They started to raise questions and started to examine things. Means peoples were become interrogative, and they were started to not everything, focus on everything, and their reasons and their causes, and people's questioned really even people's questioned religions and morality, and they think if God is exist, why he could not save them from world war, why they face world war first if God is existed, and why God were not saved him. Values had started to disintegrated in this era, means due to these beliefs due to these beliefs, values were disintegrated, social, economical, families values were disintegrated, social values were disintegrated, economical values were disintegrated, and even in this era most importance was given to materials and prosperities. Everyone started to material everyone started on prosperity and material status. Everyone want material status, and everyone was became everyone became everyone had lust of status, and sex no longer remained mystery, and modernist started open discussion on sexualism, and it was the age of disintegration and interrogations. Old values discarded and replaced by new ones. There were no common ground, and writers, modernist writers, were discussed on individualism, like we can see in William Wordsworth's poem Second Coming. Second Coming, modernist. It's a modern poem. Modernist writer William Wordsworth was a modernist writer, and in Second Coming, he says that. That everything is changed due to World War First. In that poem, he discuss about World War First, condemnations, disintegrations, and they were didn't believe on God, and they were waiting second coming. It means second Jesus. Old values discarded and replaced by new values. There were no common ground, and people had lost faith in God. Every belief was riddled by doubt, and psychology was developed during this period. Means human psyche was developed, and everyone think about happening. Everyone start thinking about happening, and some people and some new movements were introduced or started in this period, like realism, impressionism, and symbolism. Writers started to writers started use symbols in his writings, to to convey their messages indirectly to the readers. A technique of stream of consciousness was also introduced in this period by William James, and this technique much used by James Joyce and Virginia Woolf. People had become self-aware and self-conscious. Disintegrations of culture, values, and society is seen in this era. As I told you that culture and values and societies, everything was just disintegrated, fragmented due to World War First. Women's rise, voices for their rights. Before World War First, women were spending slavery life, but after World War First, women also rise voices for their rights, for their social economical right, and that's where feminism movement, feminism started in this era. Artistic experiments were started. Industrialization and middle class were uplifted, and focus on industrializations and middle class were uplifted. Art and science really influenced on the modern man's, and that's where in modern age, modernism Science is the basic cause, basic reason of that's disintegration or fragmentations, and this science and art was also influenced. This science and art influenced the modern man. Materials was rejected in favor of plain geometrical forms, means often excluded in new material like plate, glass, and concrete. In literature, there was a rejection of traditional realism, chronological plot, continuous narratives relied by omniscient narrators, close ending in favor of experimental form of various kinds. And now next one is characteristics of literary modernisms, and now we will discuss some characteristics of modernism like experimentations, individualisms, multiple perspective, free verse, literary devices, absurdities, machineries, symbolisms, and some other minor characteristics. And now at first one, experimentations. What is experimentations in modernism? Modernist literature developed a number of different experimental writing techniques that broke the conventional rules of storytelling. Some of those techniques include blended imageries and themes, absurdisms, non-linear narratives, stream of consciousness, which is flow, inner monologues. Means modernist literature started to examine techniques, develop some techniques in modern writing, and they also introduce stream of consciousness in their techniques, and reject third person narration and non-linear narratives, and uses themes and individualism. Modernist literature typically focus on individuals rather than society as a whole. Story follow characters as they adopt a changing world, often dealing with the difficult circumstances and challenges. Means modernism in which moderns started on subjectivity rather than objectivity, in which people's focus on individual perspectives, point of view, rather than society or a whole. Story following characters were also narrators adopt this concept, or they adopt to a changing world, often dealing with difficult circumstances. Multiple perspectives were adopted. Many modernist writers wrote in the first person perspective. Means before modernism, third person narrations were used, but many modernist writers wrote in the first person perspective with multiple characters to emphasize the subjectivity of each characters and add depth of the story by presenting a variety of point of view. And in modernism, free verse used. Many modernist poets reject the traditional structure of poetry, adopted it for free verse, which lacked a consistent rhyming scheme, material pattern, or musical form. Literary devices. Many modernist writers rely on literary devices like symbolism, imageries to help the reader understand the writing and to create a strong connection between the text and the readers. Means modernists use literary devices to create a connection between the text and readers, and to develop reader interest in their writings. They use symbolisms that students or readers explore hidden meanings in text, or use and they also use imageries in their writing for creating an imaginations in the reader mind. Absurdity is also another characteristic of modernism, and the carnage of the World War II profoundly affected writers of this period. Several great English poets died or were founded in World War I. At the same time, global capitalism was reorganizing society at every level, For many writers, the World War was becoming an absurd place every day. The mystery of life was being lost in the rush of daily life. The senseless violence of World War II was yet more evidence that humanity had lost its way. Modernist authors depict these absurdities in their works. And Frank Kafka's The Metamorphosis, in which a traveling salesman is transformed into an insect-like creature, is an example of modern absurdisms. Absurdism means writings. There were the world war was become absurd place everywhere. Machinery. There is no doubt that machinery has people lives. Means modern period is now as machinery period, and modernist use, and in modern age machinery was also introduced. And now in postmodernism, even in postmodernism period is now as a machinery period. Every person do their every work through machinery, and modern period is also known as the age of machinery. People has become too materialistic, brought by machinery. There is no doubt that evident of machinery made life comfortable for modern man. Means modern man's life become become comfortable due to machinery. But on the other hand, it can be said it tried to says that downward side of mechanical life was mechanical life was like a clock, using all these energies not according to her or his own will, rather according to the time schemes. Means man's life become like a clock, and he have no time to spend freely. Such atmosphere of modern life brought great disasters among the people. Symbolisms, as I also explain you, symbolism is a literary device, and postmodernist and modernist use this device in their writings to convey their message indirectly, and they left much more readers' imaginations than earlier writers, leading to open-ended narrative with multiple interpretations. Minor characteristics, literature exhibit perspectives. Meanings come from the individual perspectives. Interiority is represented, means interior monologue. Modernists were conscious to know about the inner activity of man, and inner psychology, stream of consciousness, perceptions of language changes. Psychology was also introduced, a stream of consciousness technique was also introduced, and language play an important role in modernism. Language is thick with multiple meanings, emphasize on experiments, open-ending theme of pessimism, disillusionment and melancholy in writing, sense of fragmentation and loss of faith, use of symbols and scientific methodologies, reflection of the modern chaos and confusions, the decay of plot characters in writing. Features of modern poetry. There are some features of modern poetry. Modern poetry totally against Victorian and Romantic poetry, and the disappearance of religious faith regularly being discarded. Means religious faith was discarded in modern poetry, and rhyming scheme, juxtapositions of ideas, and modern poets use rhyming scheme and juxtapositions of ideas, using of free verse. They use free verse, and irony and metaphors in their poetry. Literary trends. Now I will discuss about some trends that are used in modern age. Stream of consciousness, surrealism, cubism, dadaism, futurism, expressionism, imagism or symbolisms. And now, what is stream of consciousness? Stream of consciousness, a literary style in which a character's thoughts, feelings, and reactions are depicted in a continuous flow, uninterpreted by objective descriptions or conventional dialogues. Means it's a character's thoughts, feelings, or reactions. Means continuous, means jumbled flow of memories. Like if we read James Joyce novel, A Portrait of an Artist, in which Dedalus, in which we sees in which we sees stream of consciousness through Dedalus' life. And surrealism, our 20th century evident great movement in art and literature which sought to release the creative potentials of the unconscious minds, for example, by irritational juxtapositions of images. Cubism are high influential visual art styles of 20th century, that was created principally by artists Picasso and Georges Braque in Paris between 1907 to 1940. Dadaism was all about rejecting the mainstreaming. Futurism literature primarily focuses on 7 aspects: intuitions, analogy, irony, abolition of syntax, material reforms, onomatopoeia, and essential cynetic lyricism. Expressionism is often considered a revolt against realism and neutralism, seeking to achieve a psychology or a spiritual reality rather than record external event in logical sequence. Imagism. The Imagism movement in modern poetry focused on describing objects. Symbolism styles using symbolism, images, and indirect suggestions to express mystical ideas, emotions, and states of mind. Major writers and important works like David Herbert Lawrence. He was born in 1885 and 1930s, and his most famous work, Son and Lover. James Joyce most famous work, Ulysses, and Thomas Stearns Eliot most famous work, Murder in the Cathedral. George Bernard Shaw's most famous work, Mrs. Warrant's Professions. Williams Butler Yeats most famous work, The Land of the Heart's Desires, and John Glaworthy most famous work, The Man's of Prosperity. I hope so that you like my video. If you like it, please subscribe my channel and share it. Thank you very much.